Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 5. This episode, it's all about hospitalizations that go wrong, not hospitalizations that go right. I have another brain friend I like to play with. This is why farting brain farts, when you can't really think clearly and cloudy, which happens a lot. Sometimes it's a side effect of a medication, sometimes it's your depression that gets in the way. I've certainly experienced it from both. So this is a fun little toy I keep at hand. Oops, sorry, brain fart. As providers, we know how we want our hospitalizations to look like for our patients. Working in the outpatient setting, we have an idea of what we want to accomplish when we send a patient to the hospital. But when we're the patient, we also have an idea of how we want our hospitalization to look like so we can get better and go home. They don't always go that way. So this is going to be the last episode that focuses on my story for a while. And starting with the next episode, we're going to get to the good stuff. The things that we want to talk about. But I think it's important to hear about hospitalizations that just don't go the way we all envision, because I think most of us have had that story. And if you've never been hospitalized, chances are, if you're ever hospitalized, I gotta put this fella down. If you've never been hospitalized, chances are someday, if you might be, it may not go the way you expect it to. So you have to be prepared. So my ECT has, got tapered to a point where I could return to work. It was time to rejoin society. I made a plan with, 2 of the attending physicians I worked with that I trusted very deeply, and I shared with them where I had been, and we made a plan for reentry. I returned to work. Life went on. My house still needed cleaning. Dinner still had to be cooked. Laundry still needed to be done. My boys still needed to be cared for. It all happened. I took my medication. I went to therapy weekly. I worked hard to get that sense of normalcy back. I was also determined, though, that no one would ever know what I had went through. I was convinced that I had this big scarlet P on my forehead and that everyone could see it, that everyone would think I was crazy. I was like the epitome of self-stigmatizing myself. I certainly wasn't talking openly like I was today, because I thought if people knew, they would view me differently. I also wanted my care of my patients to be meticulous. So I was getting up earlier and earlier every morning to get to work earlier and earlier so I could take more and more notes so that I could cover up what I didn't know. I took meticulous notes of what to order, what tests to follow up on, and I thought I was winning. I thought I was fooling everyone, but one day, an intensivist sat me down and said I wasn't fooling anyone and I was better suited to go for another position. But I was shocked. I was like, this person's mistaken. They didn't understand what I had been through. They didn't know how hard I was working, and I worked harder because I was going to show them all that I could do it, and that ECT was not going to limit me in any way possible. And on the home front, I tried my best, but it still sometimes wasn't good enough. I was overwhelmed. I'd been put away in a hospital, after struggling, not wanting to be a mother. Now that I was more willing to be one, my children were so used to going to their father for everything that they weren't so willing to open up to me. It was daddy, 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 daddy all the time. It still is, let's face it, because they're still so used to him taking care of all the problems. So I had to explore a different kind of inadequacy in therapy. Try and prove myself at work, try and prove myself at home. And therapy kept me whole for a while, particularly once I stopped the ECT, because memory problems proved to be a little too insurmountable. But I kept lists, I read, I did whatever it took to keep my mind sharp, especially with kids, and prove my worthiness at work. And I would do double sessions at therapy, sometimes going for 2 hours at a time. And I finally felt like I buried that scarlet P. But I started dropping weight. I noticed one day my jeans didn't fit, so I went out and bought a new pair of jeans. I was a size 5. Do you know what the last time I was a size 5 was? I think I was 5. But I thought this is what life was supposed to be. I'm finally the mom I wanted to be. I'm finally the NP I was trying to be. I was finally the wife I wanted to be. And I was finally as adorable as I thought I wanted to be. I was social and, you know, I became a lush. I just drank and drank and drank. And I just walked everywhere. And, you know, I didn't have time for food. Lunch was a Diet Coke. And, you know, by Christmas of that year, I was a size 2. Do you know the last time I was probably a size 2? When I was 2. And no one questioned it. Sleep was rare. And if I did sleep, it required me to hoard all my medications for the day and take them all at night. And I would still get like maybe 3 hours. And I was functioning fine. My therapist thought my weight was down, thought I was acting out due to some difficult buried memories, and he just said, you know what, you're a hot mess and I can't work with you, and see you later. Sent me out on my own to find a new psychiatrist or therapist. And we did find one, but they would only agree to see me because I was such a hot mess if I agreed to an IOP intake. And the weekend before I was supposed to have that intake, I overdosed, attempting suicide for the second time. And my husband found me on the bedroom floor and had me rushed to a local community hospital, the psych unit, and I woke up in their ICU waiting to be evaluated by psychiatry. So I was told where I was told I was in the ICU, and I was told that I had overdosed on a significant amount of medication, and my arms hurt. They were the color of Empire Orchid, which at the time was the Pantone color of the year. That was 2014. From multiple attempts at ABGs, arterial blood gases, to determine my respiratory status. Fortunately, I did not need to be intubated. They laughed with me. They told me jokes. We shared nursing war stories. But severe gray-haired looking nurse practitioner showed up and said that they were admitting me and I wasn't going home. And they wanted to ship me to a hospital like 1.5, 2 hours away from home. And we were like, no, this is absolutely impossible. You guys have a psych unit. No, we have children. This is not feasible. We asked to speak to a supervisor. Nope, no supervisor to speak to. So we asked to speak to a social worker. Nope, one never came. We asked to speak to the on-call hospital administrator. They didn't have one. How do you not have one? Seriously. And basically, we got rerouted back to the disinterested social work department, and we just went round and round and round and round and round. And basically, they had all the power and we had none. We had no control. Finally, a bed at that hospital opened up and I was transferred to their unit. But I hated this nurse practitioner. I didn't want to be admitted at all. I wanted to go home and I wanted to go to IOP. I kept telling them I have an IOP appointment. I have an IOP appointment. And in this new unit, I had to share a room. It was cold. I was allowed 2 pairs of clothes. They wasn't allowed makeup. They were like, why do you want makeup? Well, hello, why wouldn't I want makeup? I had to fight to have access to a blow dryer. And then I could only use it in the middle of the hallway with no mirror, and only when staff decided it was convenient for me to blow dry my hair. No one would talk about a discharge plan. No one. Like, why would we want to think about that? And, you know, in the hospital world that I lived in, care coordinators started sniffing for discharge the second you walked in the door. All they did was restart me on the same medications I had been on before I even got there. That was the only thing they did for me the entire time. I mean, they did have me confront some of the behaviors I had been engaging in since I left Silver Hill. The behaviors that I thought meant I was fixed, but actually meant that I was exquisitely ill. The insomnia, the never eating, the never sleeping, the subsisting on Diet Coke and coffee, binge drinking, and the reckless abandon in which I was spending money like I was Warren Buffett or something. And they pointed out that it all led to an undiagnosed mania and that I was bipolar. So I went to some groups, fine, I'll play their game, but I mean, all I do is see a doctor for 5 minutes a day in a conference room. So, and that was it. So how is that supposed to get me better? How is that supposed to get me changed? How is it supposed to move me forward? So I basically filed a paper requesting a 3-day release to force their hand in to talk about a discharge. So it could have backfired and they could have gone to a judge and asked for more time, but instead they were so lazy, they looked at my notice and said, okay, here's your walking papers, go to an IOP. And I did, being told I was bipolar. So I went to the IOP. I knew that I was bipolar. I did the intake, I did the drug test, and I started doing groups. I would go every day, Starbucks in hand. I would meet my fellow patients. I would, it was a mixed bag. Some were improving, some were as sick as I was, some were sicker than I was, but would check in each day about our 24 hours that were preceding us, and, what we did since leaving the building, how we felt, rated on a scale. We'd talk about how we were managing our symptoms, how we felt if we were in trouble, what brought us in, what sidebar type issues were going on, and the feedback that only one psych patient can really give to another. And we'd do groups about mindfulness, about perspectives, about fears, about using our 5 senses to ground ourselves, which was helpful. We had a weekly family session in which families could come in for lunch, and they could provide feedback into how they felt we were progressing, which was all good and well. And I was just about to transition out of the partial hospitalization portion of the IOP when Valentine's Day hit. And I don't remember the exact circumstances, but we had a big fight on Valentine's Day. My husband was still hurt by a lot of the behaviors, recognizing as sick as I was. I put our family into some really bad financial situations due to my excessive spending and, the drinking and, still lacking basic coping skills, feeling bad about the fight, sleeping alone that night. I stockpiled all his X-Acto blades and planning to use them at first opportunity. However, having some coping skills, at the program in the next morning, I owned up to that behavior. And I found, since I had a history of suicide attempts and them realizing that X-Acto blades are a little lethal, they just pulled me out of group and shipped me right off to the hospital. Which it kind of makes me laugh. It still makes me laugh to this day because this is not how a hospitalization should go. Yale New Haven acquired the Hospital St. Raphael in June of 2012. Yale New Haven at that time was ranked number 11 nationally for psychiatric care. And I'm pretty positive when they merged, they did not look at Hospital St. Raphael when they did that ranking. And the magnet status, there's no way they looked at Hospital St. Raphael at that time and determining their magnet status either. So I was dropped off in the psych ER by the EMTs for assessment. My husband had been called to let him know that I was being brought in on suicide watch, so he was on his way. The ED was busy. I was shown to a stretcher in a hallway where I was just left. Not even in a room for some privacy, just on a stretcher. I was informed I could change into paper scrubs, not my street clothes as I was used to being in as a psych patient. And because, you know, we could hurt ourselves with our clothes. And I said, no, I'm not wearing paper scrubs. It's the middle of winter, I'm freezing cold to begin with, and you want me to put on paper clothes. So I was told we could do it the easy way or the hard way. And the hard way being strapped down by security. I was mouthy, but in the end we did it the easy way. They refused me my wedding bands, they refused me my phone so I could keep up in touch with my husband until the point I was admitted. And at that time, and I know it's only gotten longer since, I was told they set a record. No, I don't know if it's gotten longer since. I was set a record for the shortest wait, for 11-hour wait for an admission to the unit from the ER. That's kind of unheard of. People typically wait days. But I was brought up to the unit around 1 in the morning. My belongings were searched. I was given the clothes that my husband had brought. I wasn't allowed to have makeup, couldn't have a blow dryer, not even under staff supervision. I wasn't allowed to have my own soap. I had to use their 3-in-1 no rinse body wash and no rinse shampoo, body wash, and incontinence cleanser to do everything. An incontinence cleanser to wash my hair. My hair simply so the administration can charge you for use of the supplies. My hair started falling out after 8 days of using that. I was strip searched and weighed, then shown to my room. You know, it was freezing. I had to beg for extra blankets to stay warm. A sitter stayed by my side to ensure my safety. No one was allowed to take a shower due to the old pipes until 6 a.m. or later. And, you know, the fear was that we would wake patients up. There were 2 showers in each communal bathroom and always a rush at 6 a.m. sharp. Otherwise, you would be waiting all day to take one. And I could usually manage to sneak one in at 5:45 without too much staff fuss. Meals were served community style in a central room near the unit entrance. The kitchen would deliver it and the staff would call us after they set it up. You know, this kitchen never failed to deliver meals on time. It was always 45 minutes to an hour late after the posted meal time. Every single time, which was anxiety provoking, particularly in the evening when dinner was served just prior to visiting hours. So you're sitting there wondering, am I going to miss visiting hours because we're still stuck waiting for dinner to happen? The food was cold, the milk was warm, the lines were long, tables were crowded. It was like a cattle call. You know, I'm waiting for them to stick us with a prod to get us through. And I usually end up finishing just in time for visiting hours because I just didn't like to be surrounded by so many people. So I would just pick one thing to eat and just be done. Our only source of intake beyond our 3 meals was a community water pitcher in the day room, which was supposed to be kept full at all times. However, we could go days without seeing it and would be deprived of water with no explanation if we asked for one. You know, I was on lithium at the time. How is a lithium patient supposed to go without water? Your whole existence on lithium is to be able to drink enough water because it's a salt compound and you could get toxic without enough water. Some days I would get told I couldn't walk around the unit just to stretch my legs, even though the unit was perfectly calm and quiet, that I needed to stay put in the day room and just sit my butt down. And so I'd get leg cramps because I couldn't stretch, I couldn't drink water, and I couldn't exercise. We were assigned a social worker and a psychiatrist to manage our medications, plan our care, and keep in touch with our families. My psychiatrist was this odd little Frenchman who was, pleasant enough. He'd tinker with my dosing, add another medication, some adjuvant therapy, and definitively diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. So there was no going back on this diagnosis now. But my biggest peeve about him was he would start his day at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. he would start rounding. So from a patient and family perspective, this made for very slow going in my hospitalization. Medication adjustments would get frustrating. Family meetings were near impossible. And maybe he preferred it that way. But my social worker was also this strange sort of woman who could, barely contain her contempt at, you daring to ask as a patient questions. And oh my God, forget about it if your family member tried to call her and request like a callback or a family meeting. Holy crap. Just the tone, the eye look, the contempt. It was ridiculous. Why are you a social worker on a psych unit if you just don't like your job and you're so disdainful of having to answer questions? She didn't like being questioned on plans for the week. When was Suicide Watch going to get lifted? Was she staying in touch with my IOP in terms of my progress and when I could be able to return to IOP after discharge? It reached a point after careful consideration, given the awful treatment by the staff, that my husband and I decided to pursue another 3-day intent to leave paper and turn it into my social worker. She gave it to my psychiatrist, who explained if I intended to go through that, then he was going to go to a judge and make sure that I was there for a month minimum. They held all the power, and you were left powerlessness in a system where nothing was ever on time. You were expected to sit down all day and shut up. You had no access to water in between meals, and nobody wanted to answer questions and communicate. Do you think that's honestly how a hospitalization should go for patients? No. And as a nurse, shouldn't you be advocating for better for your patients? I certainly do. At least for my outpatients, I answer every question. And if I get a patient phone call from one of my inpatients, which has happened before, I sit on that phone and I answer every question they have until they are satisfied, because they're human and they need these questions answered. Because you know why? They don't know that I've been on the other side and I know how it feels, but I know. And I'm not going to let them have that experience. So in the meantime, my sitter was discontinued and I was happy to not have a shadow anymore. I still found the staff oppressive. It was clear the nurses found this as an inconvenience. They were supposed to check in with us each shift, have a brief conversation, see what we're feeling, assess our moods. But we could go days and never talk to a nurse beyond, here's your cup of water, take your pills. And it wouldn't be like that. It would be more like a very curt, take this. Well, take what? Could you explain to me my meds? Could you explain to me my side effects? Because I think you're supposed to do that. It wasn't a very therapeutic milieu. I suppose in fairness, this was the first place that I ever witnessed something like this. I ever witnessed someone restrained. But I also never witnessed a shortage of staff either. It's an interesting perspective to take it all in, from patient to provider. When you're an inpatient, all you ever wish for is discharge. And to regain one's sense of self after just being dehumanized like that, the body search to assess for scars, tattoos, anything else deemed concerning, the constant companion that comes with the suicide watch, being supervised to shower and use the toilet. What grown woman sincerely would like to participate in that daily? Phone privileges suddenly stripped away. My husband having to go and get a landline number and have it forwarded to his cell phone, giving me quarters to call from the payphones just so I could hear his voice. Previously we'd been allowed one long distance call a shift, and then suddenly mid-hospitalization, they take that away from you. They take everything away from you that allows you to feel human. And you long for discharge, you long for freedom, you long for a renewed sense of self. However broken and dysfunctional you may still be leaving feeling. This hospitalization, I attended every group, every chance I got, just to break up the monotony. I worked hard on my behavior, I worked hard on my attitude. I worked hard on my bipolar disorder in order to progress and get discharged. All I wanted was positive feedback to get reported to my psychiatrist nightly. And it paid off. 8 days after arrival, he granted me discharge. It was a Friday, with the understanding that Monday morning I would be right smack back at IOP, where I belonged. Each one of the 3 admissions up to that date particularly this one at St. Raphael's, was hell on earth for me. And I would always swear I would never get readmitted. One would expect to find me post-discharge doing cartwheels all over downtown New Haven, you know, just holding sparklers in my hands. Except the first night and day after discharge, that weekend awaiting IOP return, I spent it in my bedroom because anything else was too overwhelming, too anxiety-provoking after I had just been there. I knew I had a lot of work to do, but I did it. I completed that IOP. I was admitted again a few months later for another significant suicide attempt, you know, because I went off my meds again and got manic again and spent 3 days on a ventilator with my husband waiting for me to wake up. That hospitalization is the one that actually sent me on the road to recovery, because I had a really kind psychiatrist who really took the time to sit with me and get through to me. You know, she told me, she's like, you're a provider. You don't belong here. You know better, and you have the power to help others. And I took that to heart. It just hit home to me. And I had one other one this last fall that was described to me as there was nothing anyone could have done to prevent it, because I was on meds, I was doing well, and it was just natural course of my disorder, you know. And we can talk about that later, but that's where I'm at now. Now anything that happens to me is just natural course of my disorder. We've gotten through the acute stuff. We've gotten through me sorting out what bipolar meant and messing around with my meds and the compliance / non-compliance. And here we are today in a nutshell. But that hospitalization, you guys needed to know about, because it was everything a hospitalization shouldn't be. Water pitchers shouldn't go missing, you know. Dinners shouldn't be hours late with patients in fear of missing their visiting hours. People should have access to water during the day. That's a basic human right. People shouldn't be told to sit all day. We should be allowed to walk quietly if we're not bothering anyone. You need to know that when you're caring for people, or when you're being cared for as a provider, if it's your turn to be the one that needs the caring and the nurturing. Things can and do get better for us, so that you can be like me today, sitting in my office, being the one, being the caregiver, being the nurturer. Stick with me, because now we get to have the fun. Now is when I want to start hearing from you and hearing your stories and hearing your concerns, so that we can talk about how I got to sustain remission, sustain this period of recovery. And recovery is fleeting. You never know how long it's going to last, but the goal is to get it to last for as long as we can. And that if we have a relapse, it's not our fault. It's just something that happens. And then we'll get back into recovery again. I hope I left you with a pretty profound message, and I hope you'll tune back in tomorrow. If you like this video and you like my little brain farts, please like, share, and subscribe. And I can't wait to see you all again next time. Thanks for tuning in to Bipolar and Me. My name is Anne, and like I said, don't forget to subscribe.